Hello, I am making dough tonight for Neapolitan pizza that I will bake tomorrow. So I'm starting with, I have just a very small bag of flour here. I'm starting with all-purpose flour, and I'm going to use 2 level cups of all-purpose flour. So there's 1. And there's 2. And next, I will use 1 teaspoon of yeast. And I prefer instant rise yeast, but during the pandemic, use whatever yeast you have. This is just regular yeast, but if you can get instant rise yeast, that's my preference. So I'm just going to sprinkle the teaspoon of yeast around on top of the flour in the bowl. Then I am going to add 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. It's important to use kosher because the saltiness of kosher will be different than iodized salt. So I'm using 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and again I'm sprinkling that around on top of the flour and the yeast. This is a very simple dough. It's basically flour, salt, water, and yeast. I'm going to go to the sink and get a very scant cup of water. And by scant, I mean somewhere around, and I don't know if you can see that water level, but it's a little less than 8 ounces, somewhere around 7 to maybe 7.5 ounces of water. So a scant cup of water, and that goes into the bowl. And then I have a gadget called a dough whisk because, you know, I just like gadgets. But if you don't have a dough whisk gadget, you can use a fork or you can use your fingers, although that would get really messy. So what I'm going to do is just take that dough whisk and whisk the flour and the water and the yeast and the salt. And you kind of have to whisk for a little while until it all comes together. And as that starts to come together, it could tend to get a little bit sticky, and that's okay. You want a sticky dough. As you can see, that's a little bit sticky, and it'll stick to my fingers, probably to the point that touching the phone to turn this video off is going to be inconvenient. But you want to make sure you incorporate all the flour that's in the bottom of your bowl. You can see there's some loose flour there, and you just kind of keep turning that dough over and picking that flour up and pick it up off the sides. You don't need to knead this. It doesn't need to be kneaded. But you do want to make sure that you don't leave any flour in the bottom of your bowl. So you just pull that dough off the dough whisk. And I'm using my hand now, and I'm just picking up the flour in the bottom of the bowl. And now I have just a very rough, as you can see, it's not kneaded dough, it's not smooth. And all I'm going to do now is just use my fingers and pinch and divide that into 2. And then I'm going to pinch again, and it's getting sticky, and divide that into 2. And pinch this larger piece again so that I end up with 4 approximately equal pieces. And I'm going to roll those just a little bit. Then each one of these is going to go into its own Ziploc bag. And that's going to go into the refrigerator overnight. And it will do its rising in the refrigerator, and it will age a little bit, and it'll have sort of a nice sourdough flavor to it. Not as sour as sourdough, but you can use this immediately, but it is so much better if it has that overnight in the fridge. So once that overnight's in the fridge, when you're ready to make your pizza, you want to take your dough out a couple of hours, at least 2 hours before pizza time. Leo, did you steal Mama's other bag? And let that dough come to room temperature. And then very carefully roll your dough from the center to the edges. Don't roll over your edges because a Neapolitan pizza has a very puffy crust, so you'll roll that dough out. Bake it in the hottest, I know, Leo, you love pizza. Bake it in the hottest oven you can. I use the outside propane pizza oven, so that bakes at about 700, but 500 degree oven, and if you have a pizza stone, let that preheat for half an hour. Top your pizza and bake it. It's delicious. See you later.